Chapter 2642. Precaution. Chapter 2642. Precaution. In the vast space, battles everywhere stopped. In the battle, the members of the Divine Prefecture came to deal with Yi Futian. After that, Yi Futian wanted to kill Wang Xiao. Hence the chaotic battle ensued. Prior to this, Yi Futian had already killed Wang Xiao. However, Wang Xiao seemed to have an immortal body and had come back to life. Suddenly, the vast space fell silent momentarily. Yi Futian stared at Wang Xiao without saying anything. Wang Xiao also stared back at him. Both of them had different thoughts in their minds. Yi Futian was somewhat hesitant, not daring to expose Wang Xiao's identity. He was being wary. The person before him was no longer the Wang Xiao he knew before. He was also not the Wang Xiao that the Lord of Tianyan City knew. He was the reincarnation of a great emperor that had descended upon the world. He was an emperor. Even though the great emperor borrowed Wang Xiao's body, the imperial arm was forged by him. How terrifying would he be in battle wielding an imperial arm? Wang Xiao could not kill Yi Futian while wielding an imperial arm. However, Tianyan the Great would undoubtedly be able to. Hence, he did not dare to expose Tianyan the Great's identity. He did not know what consequences it would bring if he did so. Therefore, he naturally would not bet his life on it. On the other hand, Tianyan the Great was similarly wary of Yi Futian. On this point, the two of them were in tacit agreement. After all, he was a great emperor from the distant past. If he was reborn into this era, how would the other great emperors think? At least for now, him borrowing a body to be reborn meant that Tianyan the Great was not at his peak. He did not dare to claim that he would survive in the hands of the current great emperors. The person who was most confused was Emochinga. Many thoughts also surfaced in his mind. Had Wang Xiao truly forged an immortal body by borrowing the power of Tianyan the Great? Could he be killed? It might be so. Yi Futian looked at Emochinga. Emochinga had hunted Wang Xiao together with him. They had joined forces to take him down, and had personally witnessed his death. They were the only two people who knew how Wang Xiao had died. After his body was destroyed, Yi Futian had also destroyed his spiritual soul. Wang Xiao should already have perished and dissipated into nothingness. Even though Emochinga had not killed Wang Xiao, he was still a witness. Could Emochinga figure the truth out? Yi Futian was not sure about this. Buzz! In Wang Zhao's hand, sky tremor unleashed powerful shockwaves that swept towards where Yi Futian stood. Wang Xiao took a step forward and said, "Many thanks for creating a new divine body for me. However, I, Wang Xiao, have an immortal divine body. I am the unrivaled. Even if you want to kill me, can you pull it off?" As he challenged Yi Futian, more and more terrifying shockwaves gushed towards the latter. Sky tremor also moved forward. Yi Futian observed Wang Xiao carefully. The current Wang Xiao seemed to be mimicking the way the real Wang Xiao spoke. Even his words sounded familiar. He did so in order not to arouse suspicion. He wanted everyone to believe that he was still the old Wang Xiao, but with a renewed divine body that was immortal. His action had indeed gained the trust of the others around. After hearing his words, even the Lord of Tianyan City dispelled any doubts he had. It didn't matter how Wang Xiao was resuscitated. More importantly, the great emperor had indeed aided him in forging a perfect divine body that was indestructible. Not only was Wang Zhao's flesh imperishable, but his spiritual soul was also everlasting. Wang Xiao was the unrivaled. He was destined to be extraordinary. He would surely become the next great emperor and lead the members of Tianyan City into a new era. Yi Futian activated celerity and directly disappeared from his original spot with a flash, preventing Wang Xiao from attacking him. Wang Xiao stared as he disappeared and refrained from attacking him with sky tremor. After all, they were still in the Divine Prefecture. It was not suitable for him to kill Yi Futian here with the imperial arm. Wang Xiao did not go after Yi Futian. Neither did he demonstrate any stronger abilities. He was Wang Xiao now. At least for now. He could not unleash more powerful abilities other than what he had previously displayed. Otherwise, he would be drawing suspicion onto himself. Yi Futian's figure appeared in the area where the cultivators of the Devil World and the Dark Court were. Near him was Death God Yi Qingyao. Yi Futian said, "Let's retreat." "Retreat?" asked Yi Qingyao, somewhat dissatisfied. Just a while ago, these people had wanted to settle a score with Yi Futian. They were all her enemies. She wanted all of them dead. Wang Xiao had not been completely killed off either. How could they just retreat? Emochinga's figure also retreated to their side. He looked at Yi Futian, and then complied with what the latter said. Emochinga said, "That will be all for today." Yen Gi from the Devil World retreated here too. The cultivators from both forces returned to their respective locations. They ceased fighting and prepared to retreat. If Wang Xiao truly had an immortal divine body, there was indeed no need to continue battling. They couldn't kill him, and the imperial arm he wielded was also extremely powerful. "Retreat," Yen Gi commanded. The various cultivators retreated. The cultivators of the divine prefecture did not pursue them, instead merely watching them as they left. Wang Xiao similarly did not attack. Setting aside the fact that he wanted to keep his ability hidden, even if he didn't need to hide it, he could not just go on a massacre. If he killed too many people now, he would make enemies before he reclaimed his title as the Great Emperor. It would be troublesome. Although it was not in his nature to do so, he had already waited so many years for this day. He did not mind waiting for a little while longer. Now stability was his priority. The cultivators of the Devil World retreated. Yi Futian also left with them. The Lord of Tianyan City stared in the direction that Yi Futian left. He said, "This is irrefutable proof that Yi Futian colluded with the forces of the Devil World and formed an alliance with them. He might prove a nuisance in the future. Is the Imperial Palace considering dealing with the Ziwei segmentum?" The battle that occurred before this caused him to have lingering fears. Wang Xiao had died once, and Yi Futian, who had returned, wanted to kill him again. The City Lord's combat ability would not necessarily be inferior to Yi Futian. However, in terms of agility, he was no match for the latter. If they were to fight alone, he would be worn out and Yi Futian would be at an absolute advantage. This threat needed to be eliminated as soon as possible to prevent trouble in the future that could threaten Tianyan City. The previous battle has already confirmed all this. What more needs to be said? Someone answered. Among the lineup of the Divine Prefecture, Feng Ru was the strongest member. When he heard the words of the Lord of Tianyan City, he naturally understood the other party's intentions. However, it was still within reason. Feng Ru replied, "I will report this to the Imperial Palace and let His Highness know about this. He will decide whether anything is to be done to the Ziwei segmentum." He had witnessed today's incident very clearly. Although there was reason to suspect that Yi Futian had allied with the Devil World, he had always stressed that this matter was between him and Tianyan City. Obviously, Yi Futian did not wish to be swept into this conflict and be forced to choose a side. As for him leaving with the members of the Devil World, that was utter nonsense. Many people from the Divine Prefecture wished to kill him. If he did not leave with the cultivators of the Devil World, would he even be able to leave at all? He couldn't stay here anyway. Only the Great Emperor could decide on this matter. "All right," said the Lord of Tianyan City as he nodded his head. Since Feng Ru had already said so, he did not need to continue. On the other side, Yi Futian's group left the battlefield. "It is somewhat unfortunate that Wang Xiao is still alive," a cultivator commented. On the battlefield, Wang Xiao's combat ability, while wielding an imperial arm, was considered at the top of the pyramid. Only Yen Gi could withstand him head-on. If Yen Gi killed Wang Xiao, Yen Gi would be unmatched. Feng Ru could only stall the former, not withstand him. Moreover, they had the Death God with them. Together, the Death God and Yen Gi could massacre everyone unchallenged. Many people glanced at Yi Futian. It seemed that this top figure of the original realm also had times when he failed. He claimed to have slain Wang Xiao. However, in the end, he did not manage to succeed in doing so. Of course, they understood that this was not Yi Futian's fault. The current Wang Xiao was too resilient. However, how could they have known that the true Wang Xiao had already been killed by Yi Futian? Yi Futian did not bother to explain. Even if Wang Xiao were not here, he would keep the secret. He did not dare to reveal it. He was worried that once he revealed the secret, Tianyan the Great would have no more scruples and would rampage and massacre everyone. However, we have gained Palace Lord Yi as an aide. We still hold the advantage, another cultivator said. as though Yi Futian was already on their side. Yi Futian raised his eyebrows slightly as he contemplated on some matters. Yi Futian, a voice called out right then. Yi Futian shifted his gaze and looked towards the speaker. Standing beside him, the person gave him a vague sense of pressure. Very few people could make him feel this away now. The person who had appeared was the strongest figure on their side. It was the top demon sage of the devil world, Yin Gi. Demon sage, greeted Yi Futian as he nodded his head slightly. Yin Gi said, I have also heard of the incident in the devil world. After that battle, Donghuang Diyuan left this place. To be able to fight the only daughter of Donghuang the Great to a draw, you might have a chance of pursuing the path of the emperor. He seemed to hold Yi Futian in high regard. The cultivators of the devil world admired ability. Yen Gi had heard that Yi Futian was very powerful before this. Now he had witnessed it himself. Although Yi Futian did not manage to kill Wang Xiao, he still proved how powerful he was. Demon Sage, you speak too highly of me, replied Yi Futian. The members of the Divine Prefecture wish to kill you. Now, you and the Ziwei Segmentum most likely do not have many options. Even if you do not attack them, they will certainly attack you, Yin Gi said. Would you consider forging an alliance and attacking the Divine Prefecture together? Yi Futian and Yu Sheng had always been on very good terms. It was inevitable that they would become allies in the future. Yi Futian said, Demon Sage, although many people from the Divine Prefecture want to kill me, they are only a small number after all. The Ziwei Segmentum is not yet powerful enough to be able to fight against Emperor-level forces. Demon Sage, I hope you won't mind. Besides that, I still have other pressing matters to attend to. I will make a move first. Everyone, many thanks for lending me your aid, Yi Futian said as he saluted with his fists. He was planning to make a trip back to the village. Now Wang Xiao was Tianyin the Great. He had to take some precautions. All right, replied Yin Gi, not forcing it. He continued, be on your way. Many thanks, responded Yi Futian as he saluted with his fists again. Chapter 2643, Reappearance. Chapter 2643. Reappearance in Four Corner Village on Four Corner Continent, in the Shangqing domain. Yi Futian once again appeared in the village to see Master. If he had encountered cultivators below the level of a great emperor, he naturally would not disturb Master. However, an ancient great emperor had now appeared. He felt troubled by this, so he could only come and pay Master a visit. In the courtyard in the village, Yi Futian came to seek Master's counsel. The latter's ethereal figure appeared before him, and quietly listened as Yi Futian explained his predicament. There was no change at all to Master's face. For him, who had transcended worldly matters, it seemed that all this came as no surprise. At least he was not surprised by what had transpired. Master explained. For Tianyin the Great to be reborn by borrowing Wang Zhao's body, he needed to first merge with the latter's body and spiritual soul. So your guess should be correct. Tianyin the Great chose Wang Xiao as his successor, but he might have had this goal in mind from the very beginning. He lured them step by step, and forged a divine body over several years. Wang Zhao's body and spiritual soul should be thoroughly merged with Tianyin the Great. However, the latter had always kept his agenda hidden. Even if you had not been involved, Wang Xiao would be consumed sooner or later, and become a vessel for Tianyin the Great to be reborn into this world. Hence, it can be said that it was not you who drew him out, but rather you merely accelerated the process. That should be it, replied Yi Futian as he nodded. However, if it weren't for me, Wang Xiao might not have walked this path. Tianyin the Great would have needed to face more obstacles to achieve his goal. Yi Futian continued. Nevertheless, now that he is reborn into the world, and is now wielding his previous imperial arm, if he wishes to attack the Ziwei Segmentum, I fear that I won't be able to stand against him even with the will of great Emperor Ziwei. He was somewhat worried about this. Hence, he had come to discuss things with Master. After all, Master was also previously a great emperor. Master analyzed. First of all, that will not happen so soon. As you said, he is cautious of the current great emperors of the world, so he does not dare to expose himself. Second, if he wishes to completely merge with Wang Zhao's figure, he will still need some time. The current him is not Tianyin the Great from his heyday. I believe he still needs to cultivate in seclusion for a period of time. Moreover, none of the ancient god clans are as simple as you think, even those that you have attacked. Yi Futian quietly listened. Shi Qiao had warned him about this before as well. The ancient god clans weren't as simple as he thought they were. Tianyin the Great being reborn into the world was further proof of this. Great emperors in the ancient god clans existed in different forms. Chapter 2644. The Heavenly Kings of the Heaven Realm. Chapter 2644. The Heavenly Kings of the Heaven Realm. The Heavenly Emperor Realm, also known as the Heaven Realm, ruled over the forces of the Heaven Court. They were once very powerful, and the Heavenly Emperor was also once considered the strongest person in the world. However, this all ended following the death of the Heavenly Emperor. After the Heavenly Emperor perished, the Heaven Realm collapsed. Rumor said that the realm was currently a desolate wasteland. It was gradually forgotten by the people of the world, and was even overlooked by the lands of the 6 realms. They seemed not to give it enough attention. The people of the world had especially forgotten about the existence of the Heaven Realm. Only the members of the top forces still had their eyes on the Heaven Realm and knew of its existence. Aside from that, after the fall of the Heavenly Emperor, the members of the Heaven Realm rarely made an appearance outside of their realm. Even the current leader of the Heaven Realm was shrouded in mystery. In the cultivation world, there were rumors of the Heaven Realm. Some said that after the Heavenly Emperor perished, a new emperor was born in the Heaven Realm. He did not use the title of Heavenly Emperor. He never showed himself and cultivated alone in seclusion. It was as though he did not exist. Some voices claimed that there was no emperor in the Heaven Realm. However, Yi Futian recalled what the Devil Emperor said to him. Regardless of whether there existed a great emperor in the Heaven Realm, he seemed to be ignored. Or rather, it should be said that the ones who controlled the world now were the 6 great emperors. Hence, the people of the world only recognized these 6 great emperor figures. In terms of emperors, masters should also be considered in existence at the imperial realm. In the ancient god clans, the great emperors also existed in different forms. However, they all seem to be overlooked by the world. In the world today, the ones who stood at the peak were these 6 great emperors. Of course, Yi Futian did not know the overall situation. He knew very little about the Heaven Realm. He had only met the youth before him once at the geo-center of the Shadow Realm. This was the only reason why he knew of the existence of the latter. Sir, it doesn't seem appropriate for you to infiltrate a base of Ziwei Imperial Palace, Yi Futian said as he looked at the other party. Only when they heard Yi Futian speaking did the men on both sides of the youth turn around slowly. They cast a glance at Yi Futian. The youth was still facing away from Yi Futian, and did not look at the latter. However, his voice could be heard. Wasn't this previously the base of the Haotian clan? He asked plainly. Since your Ziwei Imperial Palace has forcefully made it their base, what's so inappropriate about me appearing here? Yi Futian had no comeback to this. The reality was indeed such. Everything in the original realm did not have an owner, and was seized by all the forces from one another. This place was also claimed by him from the hands of the Haotian clan. Since the other party could infiltrate this place, what was stopping him? You have a point, replied Yi Futian as he nodded his head. He stepped forward and walked towards the 3 cultivators from the Heaven Realm. The 2 men beside the youth turned around. Both of them walked over towards Yi Futian, one from the left and one from the right. Their auras were extremely terrifying. When they unleashed their might, Yi Futian realized that they were actually existences at the second divine tribulation of the Great Path. Only Emperor-level forces had such lineups. Even though the Heaven Realm had deteriorated, the ancient Heaven Court was one of the most powerful forces in the world. It was once glorious without equal. Even now, Yi Futian was not surprised that several cultivators of this level had appeared here. He glanced at the youth who had not moved. The other party was still standing there, and had not even turned around to look at him. The former was constantly staring at the divine wall. With 2 protectors who were so terrifying, one could imagine the status the other party had in the Heaven Realm. He was most likely the successor of the realm. In the chaotic era of the original realm, the 6 realms waged war against each other. Even the heaven realm had emerged to join the fight. The two cultivators who stepped forward also had extraordinary temperaments. The person on the left had his hair tied up. Golden divine halos flowed over his body. The frightening golden divine halos were like a pagoda. At the same time, a powerful destructive light of catastrophe flowed over him. The person to the right had hair up to his shoulders unrestrained. He had a deep gaze, and Yi Futian could sense a chill emanating from him. Yi Futian waved his hand, and the people behind him immediately retreated backward away from this region. Even if people at Yi Futian's level controlled their strength in battle, the shockwaves from their bouts were still very powerful. Lord Chun gathered the various cultivators together and protected them behind him to prevent them from being harmed by the aftershocks of the battle. The cultivators of Ziwei Imperial Palace were all looking ahead. Was their palace lord about to fight both figures at the same time? Nevertheless, they had absolute faith in Yi Futian's ability. Yi Futian was their faith and their totem. Rumble. A terrifying scene suddenly appeared in the space. With a mere thought, the space appeared as though doomsday had arrived. A bone-chilling aura enveloped the vast space. Ice, frost, and a chilly will gathered in the heavens and the earth, causing people to tremble from head to toe. In the distance, cultivators were shivering from the cold. The divine light of the Great Path appeared on Lord Chen's figure and formed a starlight screen. It enveloped everyone and made them feel better. Such terrifying power of cold and ice. Even their spiritual souls were about to be frozen. Various people secretly thought to themselves. They looked up ahead. Aside from the extreme chill, there was a menacing light of catastrophe that flashed like lightning in the frost-covered space. A rumbling sound could be heard coming from the sky. Buzz. Golden divine halos rained down. In the destructive storm, extremely dazzling divine light shot out. Yi Futian felt the might of these two figures. He frowned slightly. These two were far more powerful than the master of Celestial Worthy Mountain. They were not much weaker than the lord of Tianyan City, the leader of one of the ancient god clans. They had not only survived the second divine tribulation of the Great Path. At this level, they were considered among the top. The space seemed to be frozen solid. Even spiritual souls were frozen. Everything slowed down. However, the destructive golden lightning that contained terrifying and threatening power did not stop flashing. Right then, a guqin of ice appeared in the hands of the powerful existence on the right. Even the strings of the guqin had a cold shine to them and seemed to be covered with white frost. It gave off an extremely cold vibe. This person was proficient in the way of rhythm. The strings of his guqin vibrated, and the sound of the guqin immediately reverberated in the space. Yi Futian felt a chill down his spine. The sound of guqin was already in harmony with the heavens and the earth. It was extremely cold. It was as though they were dropped into an ice cellar and submerged into the chill. Yi Futian felt his flesh and his spiritual soul freeze. He was severely affected. This ability was terrifying. What was even more frightening was that there was still another powerful figure. Unparalleled golden divine light shone down. A pagoda of divine light appeared above Yi Futian's head. It was a gigantic divine pagoda with 99 stories. As it spun, destructive divine light pressed down and eradicated everything. In an instant, it shot towards Yi Futian. Buzz. Yi Futian's figure flickered, and he attempted to leave this place. However, he saw the gigantic illusion of the divine pagoda appear in the vast space and envelope this part of the sky. Yi Futian was already inside the pagoda. He could not get out. A dominion! Exclaimed Yi Futian. He looked towards the two cultivators standing across from him. These two were no ordinary figures. If there were cultivators from Emperor-level forces here, they would know that the two men that Yi Futian was facing in battle were two of the 4 heavenly kings of the heaven realm. One could imagine how powerful they were. In the heaven court, the 4 heavenly kings were under the direct command of the heavenly emperor. Only he could order them around. When the members of Ziwei Imperial Palace witnessed such a horrifying scene of destruction, they felt somewhat worried for their palace lord. How could these two cultivators be so powerful? What was the identity of that youth? Buzz! The destructive light of catastrophe charged down towards Yi Futian and struck his body. However, he was protected by flowing divine light. His divine body of the great path was domineering, and the light of catastrophe did not affect him. Moreover, the divine light contained the divine fire of the sun, which helped to expel the cold aura in Yi Futian's body. Yi Futian's gaze was piercing as he looked forward. Ancient Buddhas appeared in his mind. Since the other party intended to shake his will with the melody, their attacks would probably not stop here. Divine light poured down on Yi Futian as more terrifying attacks descended. The 99-story pagoda spun downwards. Contained within it was a golden halo that seemed capable of eradicating all existences. The pagoda engulfed Yi Futian in an instant. Then, it began to shrink as the light of destruction swept towards him frenziedly. This menacing power intended to destroy both the flesh and the spiritual soul of Yi Futian. It was overbearing. Humph! The cultivator who unleashed the pagoda coldly snorted. Immediately, the pagoda overwhelmed this part of the sky. Yi Futian's body was trapped within it as well. Right at this moment, intense rumbling sounds could be heard coming from the pagoda. The sound caused the 99-story pagoda to shake continuously. Shocking sounds of wheezing could be heard coming from the pagoda, as though there was a terrifying power attacking it from the inside. This caused the heavenly king from the heaven realm to frown. He was well aware of how powerful the pagoda, which stemmed from his divine wheel, was. Even if a cultivator on the same plane as him were trapped in it, they would face the fate of being crushed to death. Both their flesh and their spiritual souls would be turned to pulp. He had encountered countless opponents, yet very few could survive this pagoda. Bang! 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 Vigorous rumbling sounds continued as the pagoda shook violently. One could imagine how intense the collisions in the pagoda were. In the pagoda, ancient Buddhas appeared all around Yi Futian. They sent out gigantic palm strikes frenziedly. The palm strikes struck the inner walls of the pagoda. Even though the destructive power that rampaged in it could not destroy Yi Futian's flesh and spiritual soul, it still threatened him. Nevertheless, the power of this attack was far from being able to kill Yi Futian. It was almost time. As Yi Futian thought to himself, he shifted his will, and a divine sword appeared. He pointed his finger in one direction, and the sword charged straight towards it. With a loud bang, cracks appeared on the pagoda. Shatter! Yi Futian sent out yet another sword. Chapter 2645, All Heaven Buddha's Seal. Chapter 2645. All Heaven Buddha's Seal. Yi Futian raised his head as his figure flickered, moving higher into the sky. Both great cultivators glanced at him, then followed him. All three cultivators appeared together in the void, except for the young man. He continued with what he was doing previously, comprehending and cultivating in front of the divine wall. It seemed as if all that fighting on the outside had nothing to do with him. Clang! Above the firmament, a loud noise was heard. Although they had reached higher in the sky, they were still within the coverage of the domain, and they had not yet got out of it. There was an intrusion of a rhythmic storm that contained an extreme chill. Yi Futian's divine body was constantly struck by ice and frost. At the same time, another round of terrifying pagodas spun down and hovered over Yi Futian. The golden light of destruction overwhelmed that corner of the sky and enveloped Yi Futian's entire body. Still not quitting, Yi Futian raised his hand as he glanced at the space above. His entire body was radiant beyond description as countless divine swords converged together. Terrifying runes were inscribed on those divine swords, sheltering the sky and the sun. Yi Futian raised his hand and pointed to the sky. Suddenly, the divine swords broke through the sky and savaged this entire space. When Yi Futian comprehended this divine method, he had intended to use it as a method to be used to counter Donghuang Diyuan, and this was most apparent in the naming of this swordsmanship. The sword that Donghuang Diyuan was known for was called the Tianqing Divine Sword, and Yi Futian named his swordsmanship Tianju. When hundreds and thousands of swords were launched, all the divine swords resonated, aiming at the 99 layers of pagoda. Immediately, the pagoda collapsed and shattered frantically. Terrible explosive sounds came from the sky above, while the great path was crumbling, and the golden divine pagoda was pulverized. Yi Futian glanced at the two cultivators as he clasped his hands together. With a thought, the boundless space turned into the great path realm of Buddhism. Above the firmament, Buddhas filled the heavens while chanting the sound of Buddha. Their chanting lingered between heaven and earth, that turned into Buddhist mantras, contending with the sound of Guqin, played by the cultivator, who was an expert in rhythm. Futian was illuminated by a golden light, and divine flames enveloped his body. His divine body was impervious to any means, and it seemed that no great path could destabilize him. His actual physical body seemed to have incarnated as a Buddha. He had incredible prowess. The two of you come from the heaven realm, and you must not be some unknown figures there. How shall I address you? Futian asked loudly. The sound of Buddha lingered and resounded through the void. Only then did the cultivators from the Ziwei imperial palace realize that these cultivators were from the heaven realm. The heaven realm, according to legend, had long been weakened and had faded into history. Pagoda king of the heaven court. The cultivator who controlled the pagoda proclaimed, Melody king of the heaven court. The other person responded coldly in like manner, identifying himself readily. Two great heavenly kings. Futian assessed the two men, and saw that they were great figures from the heaven court, and both were at the top level. No wonder they had such considerable combat strengths. If they were at the level of the mountain master of the celestial worthy mountain, his current prowess could rid someone like that easily enough. Back then he was a lot less powerful. It turns out that we are in the presence of the heavenly kings. No wonder there is a battle of this scale. Futian said loudly. It's just that this is the territory that belonged to the Ziwei imperial palace. As the palace lord of the Ziwei imperial palace, I must ask the two of you to leave. As soon as he said that, Buddhas populated in the sky above, and the light of Buddha was blazing, illuminating the space of this realm. It was so radiant that every Buddha had released the light of the great path, which was blinding to anyone who tried to look at it. This technique is based on the techniques of Buddhism and my comprehension. Its combat effectiveness is superb and unparalleled. You two heavenly kings, be careful, Futian said loudly, looking at these two powerful men. The two great cultivators raised their heads to look at the brilliant figure above the sky. Futian's divine body was bright, shrouded by the light of Buddha, akin to an ancient Buddha cast in gold. A mighty divine might came from outside the heavens and overpowered this space. It was as if this terrifying power of the great path was coming from somewhere else. All these Buddhas appeared to stand high above the sky. They blasted down boundless and massive Buddhist palm strikes at the same time. Each palm strike contained incomparable power as they slammed straight down, aiming at these two heavenly kings. These domineering Buddhist palm strikes seemed to go on without end. The Pagoda King and Melody King both looked serious now. Futian's power was somewhat unexpected. Although they had heard of Futian and his accomplishments before, they had not paid too much attention. He may be someone extraordinary, but they were no ordinary folks either. The four heavenly kings from the heaven court in heaven realm, plus another great existence beside them. Although he rarely made appearances in the outside world, and had never become part of the world outside in the truest sense, the people in the heaven realm knew just how powerful this future heavenly emperor of theirs was. All the cultivators in the heaven realm believed that in the future, he was bound to be the one tasked with the mission of revitalizing the whole heaven realm. He would become the heavenly emperor one day. The reason why they were seldom seen in the outside world was that they wanted to keep a low profile. In the midst of today's chaotic situation, they finally decided to come to check things out, taking this opportunity to comprehend the power of the ancient emperors at all the major sites of relics. Therefore, even though Futian was the king of the original realm and possessed extraordinary talent, they had never thought much about him before. Even that proud son on the outside world, who had taken the world by surprise, dared to call himself the Unraveled. This was all because their young master had not made his existence known to the rest of the world. Otherwise, as soon as he made his presence known, he would no doubt dominate the peer of his generation, and no one could compete with him. Those so-called genius talents would only serve as his stepping stones. However, at this juncture in the battle, Futian's strength could be clearly perceived, and even they had to pay attention to it. It seemed that his title as premier genius talent of the original realm had some substance after all. The rhythm storm as created by Melody King was becoming more urgent, as the surrounding world was frozen shut in ice. Those massive Buddhist handprints close to them were covered with white frost. It was as if they were slowed by the impending freeze. At the same time, the storm of music turned into a terrible sharp blade, causing the collapse of those Buddhist palm strikes. The Pagoda King attacked forcefully, waving his hands in the front. Suddenly, the pagoda suppressed heaven and earth. This time, the pagoda was slashing towards the sky above, exerting all of its forces. A destructive storm slaughtered against the momentum, blocking the force attacking him. The great path roared, and heaven and earth seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. The Buddhas above the sky resonated with one another, and the great palm that fell seemed infinite. Even though they continued to collapse and shatter, there were still more of them slamming into the space below, which seemed endless. And with this terrifying attack, the entire domain became extremely heavy. An extreme chill permeated everything. It was the chill that was generated by the palm strike, which froze heaven and earth. The two heavenly kings gradually felt the chill. The power of Een. Melody King frowned. He had felt a chill. He himself was also an expert at the way of ice. He could freeze the body and spiritual soul of the others. However, at this moment, he felt the invasion of this kind of power. Above the firmament, a gigantic Buddha appeared. He came from beyond the sky and traveled towards the ground below. Futian was actually positioned between the hands and chest of the giant Buddha, thus traveling down as well. The All-Heaven Buddha's seal. As soon as Futian's words fell, his palms slammed towards the area below. Suddenly, the giant Buddha was making the same motion as he did. Boundless and massive palm strikes blasted out downwards and covered this corner of the world. It seemed as if everything was buried underneath those great palm strikes. At the same time, all the Buddhas resonated in unison as they blasted out great palm strikes at the same time. It was as if they had formed some connection. They enhanced the attack with even more power, and overpowered this corner of the sky completely. This was the All-Heaven Buddha's seal. The great attack had been comprehended by him, and his power was infinite. The cultivators from Ziwei Imperial Palace watched this scene, their hearts pounding. The giant Buddha descended like the Buddha himself had descended into the world, lording over everything. The power of this attack was unimaginable. Even Lord Chen's heart palpitated when he saw this scene. The attack was so great that he could see the leaps and bounds that Futian had made in his cultivations over the years. If the Millet Emperor were here, he would definitely find this attack familiar. This attack seemed to contain the power from the Gate of World Suppression, which was extremely powerful. The two heavenly kings from the heaven realm looked even more grave, as their eyes were fixed on the attack that pressed down upon them. Accompanied by those violent roars, their defenses were collapsing continuously, and they could not hold off that terrifying attack any longer. The divine light of the great path was released frantically as they gathered their greatest strength, attempting to block the All-Heaven Buddha's seal. However, this overbearing attack continued. It seemed as if no power in the world could stop it. A loud booming sound was heard, and the two men were blasted towards the space below. The great path of the void pulverized, and everything was shattered. Bang! Above the ground, two figures were blasted down into the ground. Down there was a boundless and massive palm that raised an entire ancient mountain range to the ground. The earth was shaking violently. It was as if an earthquake had erupted. There were even fissures on the ground. After a long time, the horrible aura finally dissipated. Two figures emerged from the ground. There was dust all over their bodies. Their breath was shallow, and some coughing could be heard. Blood pooled at the corners of their mouths. Clearly they were both injured. A palm print had wounded the two existences at the heavenly king level in the heaven realm. The Pagoda King and Melody King both looked up at Futian and thought that this man's cultivation was indeed terrifying. He was already standing at the top level of this realm. They had cultivated for many years to become the heavenly kings of the heaven realm, so they had a clear understanding of their own strength. At their realm, they were definitely at the top. However, today, they had been defeated by someone who was their junior. Truly, there was no lack of talented people in each generation, and the new always replaced the old. The era that belonged to the older generation was no more. Before, it was Donghuang the Great and Emperor Yi Qing, who had dominated the world back then. Who would the next era belong to? But no matter who, this being in the heaven realm was still an invincible existence that could suppress everything and everyone as it stood right now. The young man drew his gaze back from the divine wall at this time, raising his head slightly. He glanced at Yi Futian. His expression was indifferent, not showing the slightest hint of annoyance. In his eyes, there was simply a sense of ultimate confidence. Yi Futian seemed to have felt his gaze as he bowed his head to look below. The eyes of the two connected, and this was the second time they made contact. Last time, Yi Futian was not yet able to contend with his opponent. After all, the other had sneaked into the center of the earth and entered into the center of the shadow storm by himself. After so many years, the two of them had reached the same level. Let's go. The young man retracted his gaze after having looked at Yi Futian. It was as if he didn't care about their loss, nor did he have any thoughts of fighting Yi Futian in retaliation. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2646. The same ability. Chapter 2646. The same ability. Were they going to leave just like this? Yi Futian looked at them and asked, "You don't plan on continuing to cultivate here? We've seen everything already. There is no need." The other man responded as he stepped into the void, getting ready to leave. Above the firmament, an extremely terrifying coercion hovered in the area just in front of them, directly enshrouding their opponents within. These two heavenly king guardians, and the heir of the heavens, must have been some of the most enchanting figures in the world. And their status may be equivalent to that of Donghuang Diyuan in the divine prefecture. Yi Futian was rather curious to see how strong they actually were. Having perceived this power, the other man turned around to face Yi Futian and saw him step forward. The divine might bloomed in full force, and all the Buddhas in the heavens appeared once again, as if to repeat the attack that took place just moments ago. All the Buddhas resonated in an unparalleled and overbearing manner. Both the Pagoda King and Melody King looked very solemn as they fixed their eyes on Yi Futian. Meanwhile, the young man was facing forward as an invisible sword and tint erupted from him, tearing through the space. All the Buddhas in the heavens raised their hands simultaneously as the sound of Buddha continued to linger, resounding through the void. Another giant Buddha appeared. Its might was pressing down from above, and it was the all-heaven Buddha's seal. The two heavenly kings could not stop this attack before, and there was no telling if the heir of the heaven realm would do any better. Countless giant palm prints fell down, aiming at the opponent. At the same time, with his body as the center, an incomparable sword intent manifested around the other man. Numerous brilliant golden divine swords appeared between heaven and earth, cutting through the void. The divine sword was gathered together by countless runes, like a punishment from heaven. It was extremely horrific. It shot out madly toward those giant palm prints and collided with them. They crashed and shattered. It was a most terrifying scene to behold. There was a strange look in Yi Futian's eyes, accompanied by the palm of all heaven Buddha's seal. He looked at the other rather shocked. A radiant divine sword converged and collided with the great palm print of the all-heaven Buddha's seal. Within that great path domain, all the great paths were now collapsing as a terrifying storm ravaged the space. Palm prints and swordsmanship clashed, turning into currents of destruction, then gradually dissipated. The young man gave one look at Yi Futian and said, "Not bad." After that he turned to leave. The two heavenly kings also gave a look at Yi Futian, then went with the young man as well. Yi Futian did not pursue them this time but frowned. There was an uncertain look on his face, and a disturbance took hold of his heart. He had seen this young man's attack before. It had been unleashed by Donghuang Diyuan. His own swordsmanship, Tianju, was inspired by the swordsmanship used by Donghuang Diyuan. Heaven-punishing divine sword. Now he found out the heir of the heaven realm possessed the same abilities as Donghuang Diyuan, and it was the divine method that must have been passed on to Donghuang Diyuan by Donghuang the Great. So, Why would the heir of Heaven Realm inherit the divine method of Donghuang the Great? What was the relationship between the Heaven Realm and Donghuang the Great? This caused Yi Futian to fall into deep contemplation. Could there be some connection behind all this? If there was some connection, wouldn't that suggest a relationship between Donghuang the Great and the Heaven Realm? Of course, there was another possibility. If Donghuang the Great, by chance, had cultivated a method that originated from the Heaven Realm and passed it on to Donghuang Diyuan, then it could explain why Donghuang Diyuan and the heir of the Heaven Realm were experts in the Heaven Punishment Divine Sword. After the others left, Lord Chun and Gu Donglu walked next to Yi Futian. Together, they looked at those departing figures in the distance. These men are very powerful, especially that young man who was able to take the blow from the palace lord, Lord Chun commented. Before Yi Futian arrived, he had a brief exchange with them. He was simply unable to face 3 such giants, so he did not force the fight. Were they from Heaven Realm? His strength is no less than mine, Yi Futian replied. The blow he dealt just now was equally matched, and he had a feeling that the other man could be stronger. The young man's strength was not less than Donghuang Diyuan's. It certainly would not be any less than Yi Futian's. It seems that in these troubled times, more and more magnificent figures will begin to show themselves. This world is very big, and I am afraid that there are top figures whom we have not yet been made aware of, Yi Futian whispered. This man came from the Heaven Realm, and the fact that the heavenly kings acted as his protectors all but confirms his status. The Heaven Realm may be in decline, but in the 7 realms of the world, the heavenly emperor was once a man of might. It is not surprising that there is such an existence, Gu Donglu said next to him. However, this level of existence is rare in the world, and there were very few of them. There is no need for junior brother to belittle yourself. Any cultivator who can fight against you is probably a genius talent, who is already standing at the very top of this world. How many mighty figures are there from times immemorial until now? The world has been peaceful for hundreds of years. In the battles that took place hundreds of years ago, many have fallen, but what about those top cultivators who survived? All of them are blessed with long lives, and they will not die of old age. They may be cultivating in the shadows as we speak. Yi Futian continued. I have a feeling that in troubling times, those influential figures will reappear in the world once again. Now that Tianyin the Great had returned to them using Wang Zhao's body, with the heir of the Heaven Realm and heavenly kings who just made their presence known one after the other, this was a sure sign. The top figures of the world would emerge one after another. Before, in that war in the Divine Prefecture, he had seen many powerful people. Even so, junior brother, you will still be at the top. Only in an era when all the stars are shining, can you create an unparalleled legend. Naturally, Gu Donglu trusted Yi Futian, and believed that he would climb to the top of the world eventually. It's the same with you, third senior brother. We will all reach the top together, Yi Futian replied with a smile. This was the collective wish of the disciples from the cottage. In the future, they would have to take a trip to Donghuang Imperial Palace and discuss with Mr. Du how to change this world of cultivation. Let's go back, Yi Futian said. Although the cultivators from the Heaven Realm were discourteous, they did not hurt anyone, as they exercised great restraint. Otherwise, with the strength of all 3 cultivators from the Heaven Realm, the cultivators stationed here would be easily obliterated. Moreover, they had only comprehended for a bit before leaving on their initiative, without any intention of taking anything with them. They really only just wanted to come here to comprehend the relics of the great emperors, and use them for cultivating. They were only here for cultivation. The young man was extremely proud, probably because he wanted to visit the relics of the great emperors. Back then, he had gone deep into the center of the Shadow Realm, and felt the power of the Yin firsthand. The time since that event spanned several decades. Over the years, he must have traveled to many places, and comprehended many extraordinary relics. Would Heaven Realm be a friend or foe in the future? Or rather, there was no such thing as friend or foe to begin with. Take the Dark World and the empty Divine Realm, for example. Were they friend or foe? The Divine Prefecture, friend or a foe? Depending on the time, their role would certainly change as well. Between him and a certain principality in the dark world, there was still some unfinished business. Even the divine prefecture and Yi Futian had not always been enemies either. No one knew what the future held. Yi Futian left to return to the Ziwei imperial palace to cultivate, focusing on continuing to improve his own strength. Only by becoming a great emperor could he possibly be qualified to determine the way of the world. Today, in the eyes of the 6 existing great emperors, he remains someone hardly worthy of their attention. In the divine prefecture, after the battle with Yi Futian, both sides had entered into a truce, and a period of considerable peace ensued. It was said that Dong Huang the Great had dispatched envoys to negotiate with the 3 realms of the Devil World. This war had taken place in the North Cliff region of the divine prefecture. Thus, the North Cliff region had suffered the most, having lost countless innocent lives. The cultivators of Tianyan City left the battlefield as well, and returned to Tianyan City. At this moment, somewhere inside the city lord's office of Tianyan City, Wang Xiao was sitting cross-legged, cultivating in a terrifying divine matrix. Divine flames surrounded his body, tempering it. At this moment, Wang Xiao suddenly opened his eyes, and a terrifying pair of eyes penetrated everything he gazed at in front of him. Over there, a cultivator appeared, and it was none other than the city lord of Tianyan. The city lord of Tianyan felt a sting in his eyes. From Wang Xiao's eyes, he felt a most overbearing look of contempt, which made his heart tremble to no end. You felt it too? Wang Xiao asked. He could sense the presence of the other, as he had looked in on him several times already. That, and based on some of their previous conversations, he knew that the other had put 2 and 2 together. You are not Wang Xiao, the city lord of Tianyan said. His heart was beating wildly. Even a top figure like himself was feeling a little nervous at this moment. He knew Wang Xiao too well. He had raised Wang Xiao, and he was familiar with Wang Xiao's every movement. Even if the other had deliberately put up a show in front of him, he couldn't be fooled. Some things couldn't be disguised, such as that unmistakable haughtiness that seeped right from his core. That was something Wang Xiao did not have. Wang Xiao sat there, staring at the city lord of Tianyan. You can't guess who I am? When he spoke, a terrifying imperial might came down and enveloped the great hall, so that the city lord of Tianyan felt suffocated. Meanwhile, his heart was beating so hard it almost jumped out of his chest. Or should I say that you are unhappy because it's me? I dare not. The city lord of Tianyan bowed most respectfully in response. Under that mighty pressure, he had no choice but to prostrate and kneel on the ground, saying, Greetings to our most high ancestor. His voice trembled slightly. His attitude was respectful and extremely pious. Although he was a bit sad because of Wang Xiao's death, a trace of hatred lingered. After all, that was his beloved grandchild. But soon another overwhelming emotion was emerging. Their ancestor Tianyan the Great had been reborn and returned to them once again. For Tianyan City, Tianyan the Great was far more important than Wang Xiao. All his high hopes for Wang Xiao were nothing more than for him to become a great emperor one day himself and lead Tianyan City to glory. Now that the great emperor had returned, Tianyan City's former glory would be restored soon enough. Furthermore, everything that Tianyan the Great could give to the family was far beyond what Wang Xiao ever could. One day, when the great emperor had restored his peak strength, perhaps he could even dominate and rule the 7 realms. How could he not be emotional? Get up, Tianyan the Great remarked nonchalantly. You are one of us, part of the Wang family. You don't need to grovel like this. To everyone else, I am still Wang Xiao, and you, the city lord of Tianyan. I understand. The city lord of Tianyan nodded. Tianyan the Great nodded. But the city lord of Tianyan was still standing in place, which prompted him to ask, Is there something else? Sir, regarding Yi Futian and the Ziwei segmentum. Even with the return of the great emperor, he was still thinking of Yi Futian. His hatred for Yi Futian was plain enough. I will deal with him, Tianyan the Great responded lightly. Currently, it was not convenient for him to venture out. After cultivating for another period of time, he could then announce to the outside that his realm had been elevated, and that his strength had greatly improved. At that time, There was nothing to stop the destruction of the Ziwei segmentum. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2647, Glory of Your? Chapter 2647. Glory of Your. A tremendous piece of news came from the land of the Divine Prefecture. Donghuang Imperial Palace and the Devil World were in the middle of a peace talk to stop the war. For this reason, the Divine Prefecture was willing to give up the North Cliff region and leave it to the people of the Devil World as a place of cultivation. The Divine Prefecture would forfeit it without further interference and withdraw their troops. At the same time, the cultivators of the North Cliff region may freely choose to move away or stay. During this process, the people from the Devil World may not do anything to the cultivators in the North Cliff region. Donghuang Imperial Palace had obtained the truce at the expense of ceding one of the 18 regions of the Divine Prefecture, the North Cliff region. This decision had caused a great uproar in the Divine Prefecture, and it was the source of much contention. Already, some people in the Divine Prefecture had begun to question the judgment of Donghuang the Great. Hundreds of years ago, Donghuang the Great came out of nowhere and ruled the land of the Divine Prefecture with his outstanding talent. Now, hundreds of years later, Donghuang the Great had decided to give up the territory of the North Cliff region. Was this really the great emperor that they once knew? Could this mean that, even without Emperor Yi Qing, Donghuang the Great was equally cautious about the Devil Emperor? Many other rumors were also circulating on the land of the Divine Prefecture, undermining the authority of Donghuang the Great. Of course, some claimed that the North Cliff region had already been occupied by the 3 major legions of the Devil World. The place had turned into a battlefield, and any more fighting would be pointless. It would only bring more deaths and suffering, perpetuating the great disasters to other continents in the North Cliff region. This was the true reason why Donghuang the Great had to set aside his pride and hand over the North Cliff region, to allow the cultivators in the North Cliff region a chance to extricate themselves. However, no one knew for sure the actual thought process that went through Donghuang the Great's head. It was just that the Divine Prefecture had already lost its right to govern, and now with the North Cliff region fallen into the hands of the Devil World, it seemed that over the years, the Divine Prefecture had made one concession after another. Was this still the same Divine Prefecture that they used to know? Was Donghuang the Great the same great emperor as he once was? Other than that, there was another ponderous news that came out of the Divine Prefecture. Rumor had it that Wang Xiao of Tianyin City was no longer Wang Xiao. This news came out of the North Cliff region, and the evil sage of the empty divine realm was the one who first made such a claim. Tianyin the Great did not make any response whatsoever. He was an old monster who had lived for a great many years. He was someone from the ancient days who was now coming back through reincarnation. This in itself was a very sensitive issue, especially now that they were in a time of chaos. He knew very well that if he got too close to any one side, it might make him a target to other forces. The presence of a great emperor would disrupt the balance of the world. He wanted to wait until his cultivation had been fully restored to its peak level, as it was the only way to preserve the existing balance without affecting those great ruling emperors in the present world. Or, he could wait until the situation became clearer, when he was very confident that picking a side would not translate into total obliteration of him or his people. Therefore, Tianyin the Great announced that Yi Futian of Ziwei Imperial Palace was instrumental in the slaughters in Tianyin City, which killed numerous cultivators inside the city. For that, he needed to be brought to justice. In addition, he also announced that Ziwei Imperial Palace was not worthy of occupying a territory, lording over the original realm. Instead, Tianyin City would take over Ziwei Imperial Palace and replace it. After the news came out, the Divine Prefecture was in mayhem again and was shaken to its core. Tianyin the Great had decided to attack Ziwei Segmentum, not only because of the confrontations that happened with the Ziwei Segmentum, but there were other deeper implications. For example, he could move Tianyin City into Ziwei Segmentum in the future and take over the control of it, thus ruling over all of the original realm. This way, he would neither belong to the Divine Prefecture nor compete with Donghuang Imperial Palace for control over the Divine Prefecture. He coveted the original realm. For this reason, many principalities actually responded to his call of arms, including all the ancient god clans, who were supportive of Tianyin the Great. They were willing to follow him to the Ziwei Segmentum to destroy Ziwei and get rid of Yi Futian, as if they had, once again, forgotten what happened once upon a time. After all, this time, it was the return of Tianyin the Great, and Yi Futian would die without question. Finally, the end was upon Ziwei and Yi Futian. People in the Divine Prefecture were quite sorry to hear this news. Yi Futian's strength was widely witnessed and proven. It was said that he was the one who killed Wang Xiao, while Wang Xiao was wielding the imperial arms on the battlefield. Furthermore, he suppressed the city lord of Tianyin, demonstrating how powerful he was. Truly, he could be said to be a world-famous genius talent. Given time, Yi Futian could very well embark on the road to become a great emperor himself. However, the return of an ancient emperor would cut off his path to becoming an emperor. Not to mention this ancient emperor meant to do away with Yi Futian. This time, Yi Futian might not be able to escape. Naturally, Yi Futian received the news quickly in Ziwei Imperial Palace. How could such important news concerning him be overlooked? Many had contacted him as soon as they got wind of the words, and Shi Qiao was also there, who informed him right away. As the news spread through Ziwei Imperial Palace, many cultivators felt a sense of hopelessness, like the dark clouds were hovering over their heads again. It had not been an easy journey for Ziwei Segmentum, as they had been through so many catastrophes and disasters, under siege time and time again. Now that a great emperor had been resurrected, his first order of business was to destroy them. This made them feel unjustifiably persecuted. This time, would they be heading to ruins? Who could block the might of a great emperor? Even though Tianyin the Great hadn't fully recuperated all his strength as the great emperor, he was once an ancient emperor who was armed with imperial arms. It was probably impossible to stop him no matter what. Yi Futian had heard the chatters on the outside and thought that whatever was destined would come sooner rather than later. He had hoped it would be later, but the truth was exposed before schedule. The evil sage Mo Chinga guessed correctly. Now that the identity of Tianyin the Great had been revealed, there was no incentive for him to hide the truth from anyone anymore. So, now he decided to act proactively by seeking the destruction of Ziwei Segmentum and him. As he stepped forward, Yi Futian came to the main hall in Ziwei Imperial Palace, where many cultivators had already gathered. Their attention turned to Yi Futian once they saw him approach. "Palace Lord," Lord Chen called out. "They are on their way here," said Yi Futian. The clan lord of the Shun clan had also joined the army dispatched from Tianyin City. The Shun clan was under his control, so he was very keen on what was happening. No movements from the other side could escape his sight. Although everyone was puzzled, they didn't ask anything further. Yi Futian would have his own way of dealing with things. I knew already when I was in the North Cliff region that why I chose to leave. After that, I went back to the village to talk to the teacher. The teacher said that he would keep an eye on this side. Yi Futian tried to calm everyone down and continued. "However, I am not very sure of the situation regarding the teacher, and Tianyin the Great has truly been reborn and returned, so the outcome of this battle is unknown. If Tianyin the Great cannot be blocked, all of you should leave immediately through the teleportation Grand Matrix and give up Ziwei Imperial Palace. We will live and die with Ziwei Imperial Palace," Lord Chen and the others said. "There is no need to do that, save yourselves." Yi Futian gave a wave with his hand. He didn't like a useless sacrifice. Although it was noble in sentiment, it had no real substance. Sky Tremor could not block this attack either. The divine sword that penetrated the heavens and the earth outshone Sky Tremor, causing the latter's light to slowly dim. Simultaneously, The light of the divine sword shot towards the figure of Tianyin the Great. His body shifted, attempting to escape. However, under the divine sword of annihilation, the empty space was obliterated. Buzz! The light of the divine sword pierced through the deity-like figure. An illusory figure appeared. It was Tianyin the Great himself. His eyes revealed a look of astonishment, as well as an intense dissatisfaction. His body was dissipating slowly now. Endless starlight transformed into intense killing intent, and pinned everything in place. Even the illusory figure of Tianyin the Great could not escape. No, Tianyin the Great mumbled. He had waited for countless years before he could finally make a comeback. Why would fate treat him in such a manner? He encountered Great Emperor Ziwei. Yet another wave of countless starlight penetrated through him. Tianyin the Great was completely turned to dust. Only a hint of his aura lingered in these turbulent currents. The currents flowed aimlessly and flooded the space. No one knew where the currents would end up. In the space outside of the Ziwei segmentum, a storm of turbulent currents stirred up. Everyone moved away frantically. Even though the battle was not directed at them, they might still die if they were careless, and got caught up in the aftermath. After a long while, the storm finally dissipated. The space stabilized. Many cultivators emerged, appearing somewhat disheveled. The Lord of Tianyin City stood there stunned. He looked into the void. Tianyin the Great had disappeared. Everything had disappeared. He felt his heart clench as his face revealed a look of pain. With the return of the Great Emperor, Tianyin City was on its way to glory. However, they never imagined that this beautiful dream would end so soon. They were about to face a nightmare now. What did the death of Tianyin the Great signify? Now in Tianyin City, the will of the Great Emperor no longer existed. Of the two imperial arms, one was destroyed. Now sky tremor appeared down below in the Ziwei segmentum, in the hands of Futian. Could Tianyin City, which had been passing down the teachings of a great emperor for countless years, still be called an ancient god clan? From this day forth, Tianyin City might lose its title as an ancient god clan. What would they face next? The various cultivators did not ponder about these things. They had yet to wrap their heads around the destruction of Tianyin the Great. What they had witnessed astonished them. Today, Great Emperor Ziwei returned for one battle and killed off Tianyin the Great, who had been reborn. When Tianyin the Great declared he had been reborn, this news shook the world. However, before he could truly act, he was killed and disappeared. Chapter 2650. Fear of Tianyin City. Chapter 2650. Fear of Tianyin City. Tianyin the Great, a great emperor of armoring in ancient times, was famous throughout the world in his time. After so many decades, he returned again, using Wang Zhao's body, and was in this world. Today was his first battle, in its true sense, after his rebirth. However, in this epic first battle, he was met by Ziwei the Great, who had returned and died by his hand in battle. His fate was lamented by many. It was sad and shocking. However, wasn't he also the one who sought his own end? He could have chosen anyone as a target, but he picked Ziwei segmentum. Perhaps even he did not anticipate that Ziwei would be woken up like that, and came back to put an end to him. Tianyin the Great was not the same as Ziwei the Great. Tianyin the Great had been reincarnated in the truest sense of the word to reappear in peak physical form. But Ziwei the Great was different. If he had a choice, Tianyin the Great would have never wanted to die alongside Ziwei the Great. Unfortunately, once a step was taken, there was no turning back. In the void, the cultivators from the ancient god clans finally woke up from their shock. And then just as quickly, all of them quietly exited. Now that Tianyin the Great had been killed, the situation was completely reversed. They dared not linger needlessly for fear that Ziwei the Great might obliterate them as well in a raging rampage. Of course, it was best for them to slip away at this time. The storm of destruction was still flowing about, and those cultivators quickly evacuated from different locations. They were running pretty fast. Withdraw. The city lord of Tianyin was mourning, but this was not the time for regret. The most urgent matter was to get out of here as soon as possible. They were moving fast, as their group tried to get out as quickly as they could. This time, it was more miserable and embarrassing than the last time. Futian did not chase them down. Ziwei the Great was using his own body to urge all the power from the stars in heaven for that explosive and apocalyptic strike, ending the life of Tianyan the Great. All that effort was burning through the will of Ziwei, or else they would not have been able to kill a reincarnated great emperor, much less Tianyan the Great, as aided by the imperial arms. He could sense that the will of Ziwei among the stars was gradually dissipating, and he was filled with an inexplicable sense of sadness. Yi Futian's eyes opened to watch that elusive figure above the firmament. At this moment, Ziwei the Great was becoming more blurry by the second. "Teacher," Yi Futian called out in a low voice. His voice was deep and tinged with sadness. In his hand, he held the imperial arms, the sky tremoring. But it was no longer in its complete form, because the will of Tianyan the Great that had been inside the imperial arms was destroyed.